I think you're going to see a lot more smaller clubs that are dance music centric. I think you'll see very few live stages. And I think that the line between artist and audience continues to blur.
Hello and welcome to another Music Ally Focus episode with me, Music Ally's editor Joe Sparrow, and in this episode we're joined by the co-founder and CEO of the Brooklyn venue Elsewhere, Dhruv Chopra. Now Elsewhere is a venue that is at the moment reaching around to find a new business model in a new world of live music. Of course, today music is consumed, created, performed, played, discovered, experienced and valued very differently to how it used to be. And yet the basics of live music are the same. It's a group of people in a room while some music happens. So Elsewhere is trying something that is both the same and yet different by exploring what a local live music venue can be in 2024 and how it can make money. Now, the model they've landed on involves a subscription membership, a digital Discord community, and real-life cultural epicenter approach. These are all perhaps things that local venues have always been, but this is a slightly more explicitly defined and platformized model. So we spoke to Dhruv about this, and he also spoke about the state of the small venue ecosystem in a post-pandemic era, when young consumers are demanding much more from their live experiences than cheap beer, and when $150 stadium show tickets are monopolizing the budget of gig-goers. It's a great conversation. Let's go over to Dhruv right now. So I'm very happy to welcome Dhruv Chopra, who is the founder and CEO of the New York venue Elsewhere. Hi, Dhruv.
Hi, Joe.
Good to have you here. Now, we're going to talk about the challenges, the ecosystem, and what's going on with small venues, and also quite a lot about this the community element as small venues transition to a sort of new way of working and having a role in the community. But before we get into that, can you just tell us who you are, what your background is in live music, and what and where Elsewhere is, please?
Sure. And thank you again for having me. I've been following your newsletter for a while. So I got into this in a sort of atypical way, and maybe that's actually the typical way for most of us. I grew up playing music obsessed. I started playing guitar before I could read. I went to my first concert when I was 4 years old. It was the Bryan Adams Summer of '69 tour.
That's a good, solid start for a 4-year-old. Yeah.
1990 1991 in India. I was born in Mumbai, moved to Connecticut with my folks, and grew up playing music. And my best friend and my next door neighbor, since I was 7-year-old, Jake, we grew up playing music together, and Jake is one of my co-founders. So over 30 years of friendship there. And then Jake went to NYU, and his freshman year roommate was Rami. And Rami's our third co-founder. So Jake and Rami actually began our journey. They started our booking and production company, Pop Gun Presents, out of their college dorm room in NYU. And that was around the mid-2000s, where it was the post-Napster, pre-Spotify era, an explosion of genres. Pro Tools was giving away to Ableton. The barrier to entry was going down, and the industry didn't know what to do with all of these new sounds and musicians and this blend of live and electronic. And we joke that we evolve at the speed of the internet, but these guys are really able to look around corners and just throw together shows with So we've been known to do early shows for unknown or rising stars who then become huge. I mean, the list is long, but they did Vampire Weekend, MGMT, Lana Del Rey, Stormzy, Wiz Khalifa. It's just an insane list. Disclosure's first show in America.
Where were you booking these for?
Well, that was some in Manhattan, but that was the Brooklyn scene was just starting then. Yeah. And I remember going around Williamsburg and all the lofts, and it's just industrial warehouses and a handful of old family homes. And that was the milieu we came up in. And I was a very serious jazz musician in high school and decided that wasn't for me. Ended up going to Yale, just trying to figure out what I was into, and actually got into sort of sustainability and investments. And so that gave me a little bit of a business, not really, but enough of sort of acumen there to help the guys as they continued to build Pop Gun. Most of the time, I was just drinking their free whiskey and hanging out at shows, but together we just stayed very close. And then they took over a music venue. Well, at the time, it was really just a warehouse space called Glasslands that did some shows here and there.
I remember, yeah.
They took that over and they turned it into the powerhouse that, the beloved sort of local. And that's really where the community building started, right? Same ethos. You're booking music that's up and coming, artists that have a vision that without boundaries, right? Whether it's live or electronic or by any genre. And it was actually kind of radical at the time to even think about like a DJ or an electronic artist like a Headliner. That was like 2008, 2010. And then at some point, I can't remember the day or the moment, but we decided that, the condos are coming into Williamsburg, and ironically, Vice magazine built their headquarters in the warehouse that housed Glasslands and two other beloved venues. And
that was Kent 235 or something. I went there when it was then.
You nailed it. That's it. So we had 285 Kent, Glasslands, and Death by Audio right next to each other, and all got displaced by Vice coming in and taking over the warehouse, which is very ironic. But the writing was already on the wall, and we knew that we needed a bigger space, and that's actually a tailwind we continue to see today. Right, we see that the independent scene is more and more populated by the long tail of music and genres getting fatter and wider, more listenership and followership of what are formerly niche musicians. And so less concentrated listenership in sort of global superstars, smaller artists getting bigger faster, getting representation faster, getting, thanks to virality, getting followership faster. So that middle that sort of middle category of musicians, right? They're getting more and more fandom, and we needed a bigger space to be able to sort of support the future of what we saw as live music. So we decided we're going to build elsewhere. And so for 10 years, I have been in live music, been doing this longer than anything else. And we recently combined Elsewhere and Pop Gun. We've always acted as sister companies, but we decided everything is going to be sort of in-house, and that's another trend I could sort of talk about, which is the difficulty of a third-party promoter being able to operate without a music venue. So we started to move more and more in-house, and the rest is history.
So where is the venue exactly?
It is in Bushwick, in Brooklyn. So now I guess the real estate agents are calling it East Williamsburg. But
is that what it's called now? Right. Okay.
But it's Bushwick, and Bushwick has a history. And to your point about community, right, it's very important for us to be a part of the neighborhood, not just sort of outsiders or interlopers, right? We make it a point to support and be part of the community and the local neighborhood.
Right. And you mentioned there, of course, those emerging artists emerging very quickly, moving through the gears quickly and reaching success faster than before. They're finding that, of course, through the various platforms and online technologies they can use, but also through a key part of that is performance, right? And yet, what we're also seeing is small venues under more pressure than ever. Their business models, the traditional business models, kind of being crushed under rezoning, or the estate agents calling Bushwick East Williamsburg, which is kind of ridiculous, or whatever. So, and also a change in consumption from gig goers who perhaps in the past would have, bought a bunch of tickets cheap for emerging artists, but instead they're choosing to spend one big ticket on a bigger artist or something. And there's a lot of different weather elements to the change in the local venue scene. So, and the financial pressures, of course, are huge, from heating bills going through the roof or whatever. So, what are you hearing, having worked in that world in a bunch of different ways and owning this venue now? What are you hearing from other owners as well as your experiences? What are the pressures? What are the headwinds? And what are the challenges that those venues are experiencing at the moment?
Absolutely. And I have an interesting dual perspective on this because I do a lot of political work and advocacy work for small businesses, nightlife, and work with the mayor's office and various sort of advocacy groups. You know, I think that it's hard for me to quantify kind of how much these stadium and arena acts have taken money out of people's
Mm.
pocket versus going to live music. You know, the I hadn't heard the term super fan until recently, and now it's everywhere. But
Yeah.
I kind of realized that where we are in terms of the artist's life cycle, the artists that we support, it all caters to super fans. And so, as much as we do a lot to make sure people are comfortable and safe and having a good time and engendering community, it's the artist who has created fandom, and we are helping them connect with their fans. And so it's a bit of, if you build it, they will come. If you book it, they will come. And what we have found is that these are sort of very rabid music followers, right? People who are obsessed with music and these artists. And so they tend to find ways to come. And so we haven't noticed any sort of exchange between sort of arena acts and us. That said, I think the difficulty for the consumer is inflation broadly, right? Ticketing inflation at the arena level is absolutely insane.
Mm.
If you look at inflation in tickets and the live music in these sort of more independent, smaller venues, CBGB in the 70s was $5 to $10 a ticket. It's still only 10 or $15 to go to our
Mm.
smallest shows, and maybe 30, 40, $50 at our biggest shows. Average is more like $22.
Which is cheap. I mean, today, it was not much more than that 10 years ago, right?
That's it, right? And we've even created a membership program where we want to, like I said, the fans create the artist creates their fandom, but there's a subsect of those folks who come to elsewhere who are fans of ours, right? We have 300,000 people that come through our doors every year, and some percentage of them come a lot, and we want to make it easy for them. So, we offer a membership program where you can get up to 100% off a ticket, just a free ticket, and 50% off for your friends. So in that sense, and then meanwhile, right, a lot of people only come to their favorite artists, and maybe you have their favorite artist 2 or 3 times a year, and they only come 2 or 3 times a year. So we offer ways for to make it affordable. Um, I think the difficulty that we're facing is just the cost of living has gone up so much, and particularly in big cities, right, where inflation has hit transportation, food, dining, going out. It's just hard to know where to spend your dollar. And I think we're relatively insulated from that, again, because we are supported by super fans, and they will go see their favorite artists. But even then, there's only so much you can demand from folks. So I don't know exactly what's taking money away from people, but livability, just cities becoming unlivable, is a problem that affects us and the arts and nightlife. And on the other side of it, right, we see the same inflationary pressures, particularly in the insurance market. Insurance has gone up 3x for us since we opened, massively crushes us. And, we always want to pay people well. So payroll, everything else is something that we always try to do right by. And that's expensive. And, that's really where the rub is that while you have these inflationary pressures on our cost structure, we are still trying to be affordable. And, I think as venue owners and operators, we got into this not because we love it, because we will always identify and empathize with that 20-something-year-old who is just going out every night. And the inflation and ticket prices haven't gone up that much. Drink prices have gone up, but it's still tough.
I'm thinking about the sort of traditional model that small venues have always operated under, and I'm thinking back, over 20 years now, to when I was that age and hopping around venues, and you're paying a small amount to go and see a band or an artist you don't really know, but you take a flyer on it. And the model is you pay on the door, you go in, you buy beers, and you go home, right? Is that traditional model for those kind of venues simply just not working? And you sort of started talking there about this other model that you've introduced, which is the membership and community, and that's where you start drifting elsewhere. So is that traditional model becoming harder and harder to make work?
The traditional model is very difficult, but it's all we've got, really, right? I think we're all trying to figure out how to make this work, in particularly in the past year or two, right, where there's just a lot of competition for people's attention, and a lot of new businesses and nightlife and promoters, and lots have been happening since COVID. So I don't think any of us have really figured it out. I think our membership program is a very, we are very much enthusiastic about our program, right?
How does this work? So they can, there's different tiers, isn't there? They can subscribe monthly for different tiers, and depending on what tier you're on, you get either guaranteed discounts, guaranteed places, or discounts all the way up to 100%.
That's right. It's really 3 tiers. And look, we launched this a year ago. We opened up 1,500 spots and they sold out within minutes. And that to us was like, okay, there's something else going on here. People are getting elsewhere tattoos, and you go to these members only events and it has this vibrancy, right? And this goes to another trend, they call it the loneliness epidemic. And I think it's very real. As things move more and more online, people want to connect more than ever. And so there is beyond the loyalty program, beyond the discounts, there's a huge community driver, I think, for people. And we are always resource constrained, so it's hard for us to continue to offer those community sort of supporting events. We did open up a Discord channel, which is a first of its kind, to sort of create, if you're a member, or even if you're not, you can be a part of that Discord channel, so you can connect with other young music-obsessed folks. It's a beautiful thing to see. People are just in there, sure, they're talking about set lists and what did this DJ play, and this was such a great night, and who wants to meet up. They're making new friends, but they're also just talking about what's happening in music, art, culture. So it's an interesting model because it mirrors what we do in the real world. We engender community and communities around great new music by curating great new music. And we can do that in the digital world, right? So there's a powerful community element that we're exploring there. And, in terms of the financials of it, people really appreciate it. And I think that it's a way for them to keep coming back, right? It's a way to say that, okay, well, I already have my Elsewhere membership, so I'm going to go to Elsewhere. I'm going to see what's on the calendar. So it also promotes music discovery. It helps them branch out and see artists that they normally wouldn't see. They take a chance on it because, they've got the membership.
Obviously, membership of a club or a venue like this it's not new. It's happened a lot before. But a famous example in the UK, for instance, is the Hacienda in Manchester was very famously a membership place, and people were equally sort of obsessed about going to the venue and seeing what would happen as they were what was happening in there, right? And I guess that's kind of what's happening with Elsewhere as well, is that you're building, it's not just brand building, it's community building, it's something else, it's this third place thing. But you've sort of supercharged it in a sense, in that you're sort of, this isn't merely brand building. You're saying, okay, we are building this community in real life. You're pulling all these threads together, and it's sort of for this modern audience, which, if you look at the data, people are saying, I'm now at the age where I can say young people and mean it. Young people are going out less for all sorts of reasons, but it doesn't, whatever those reasons are, it has a tangible impact on their well-being and health and, the community. So you're strongly building this cultural community center aspect. It obviously works, well to have, financially guaranteed income of having this group of people, but you're putting more emphasis there. Why did you make that decision?
It's first and foremost, it was a discount program. It is a way to make it more affordable to keep coming back. If you are one of those people that comes to Elsewhere once or twice or 3 times a month, we wanted people to make it a little bit easier on the wallet. and also try to incentivize people to see more music, right? Take chances on bands. The trend we've seen in the last 10, 15 years of doing this, I call it the Yelpification of the world. It's experimentation is an expensive luxury, right? You have so much time, limited money. You want to go out, you want to make sure you have a good night. And so you're only going to go after the stuff that you know is a sure bet. And this was a way to increase experimentation and make it cheaper for folks.
What's the fear of the? I'm interested in that because it sort of sounds like that, the Yelpification, or the people only going to the number one, number two recommended thing.
Yeah.
What is the? I presume it has a chilling effect, but what is the chilling effect on culture when people are saying, "Well, I'm going to go to these guaranteed sort of hit events or places"?
Well, it's funny you mentioned the Hacienda. We love the Hacienda area club. These are the places that we took inspiration after. They were natural hubs, right? That was the way you discovered new music. That was the way you found your people. Now, it's changed where you're only going to go if your favorite headliner's playing, and you're going to go with your friends. That's not to say you're not going to meet other like-minded people. And one thing that we say is that, these days, what the effect that's had is you actually have multiple communities. You don't have this one community that rallies around a place. You have multiple communities that come to a place when their favorite artist or their sound or their culture is being championed through a sound or through a party. And so the membership program was also a way to combine all of these folks who maybe are there for different sounds or different sort of subcultures and niches, but are also all music obsessed and all rally around that sort of common cause. The chilling effect I think it's had, and it unfortunately goes back to market forces too, and inflation and that idea of like resource constraint, is you're not just going to show up to elsewhere and see what's happening. You're not just going to take a chance on a random artist you've never heard of. The folks who do that are in a minuscule minority these days. As much as we are a beloved music venue, people aren't just showing up unless we have an act that they know and love and are following. So that's really it, right? It's the experimentation is gone. Music discovery, I think, happens in the digital world. It doesn't happen in the live world anymore.
And yet, an aspect of that in terms of the community is it's like it's trust, isn't it? They trust you to put up. They're going to have a good time when they go, so it sort of lessens the barrier of entry, even if it's an artist they're not sure about, right? So there's it's sort of. Am I right in saying that it's sort of smoothing that pathway in? So they're saying, well, I'm not sure about this artist, but I like the venue. I like the people who go there. That sort of readdresses the balance a little bit, doesn't it? Of saying, okay, instead of saying, okay, I'm going to go to this venue that's a black box and has an artist I know on the stage, it's readdressing that balance, isn't it?
Absolutely. And we have taken a lot of pains to engineer those interactions. We have multiple rooms and stages, and we'll have sort of complementary different artists and sounds, and then we'll have communal spaces so that people can go and talk and mingle. And so we try to create those moments as much as we can to get people to sort of meet other folks. Now, you can have all those ingredients, but it's great to have those ingredients, and on top of that, throw in a layer of discounts, free tickets, and that was really the idea, right? Is that it's a free ticket. I might as well go. Let's see. I love this place. I always have a good time, and it costs me nothing.
What's the reality now of a venue like that is a community hub, or is positioning itself as a community hub? It's part music, part community hub, part about the artist performing. In an era where community is primarily found online, primarily found in apps, and I use the word community fairly loosely because you're still like the end point of a cloud, right? Of connections. It's not the same as being in a room of however many 100 people and you're meeting new people and there's something going on, right? It's just not the same. So one of those is incredibly easy and is in your pocket and you're being poked all the time to engage in it, and the other one is where you've got to hop on public transport and go there and walk through the door and buy drinks and blah, blah, blah. They both have different good points to them. But how does that work? What are you hearing from people in an era, doing that in an era of something which is so digitized and like a nebulous?
I think it becomes more important than ever. If you are only going to the office 1 or 2 days a week, or fully remote, you need to get off those screens and you need to meet people in real life. You need that reprieve. And our industry is as old as the sort of tribal campfire, right? It is a fundamentally human way to connect. And in that sense, our quote unquote business model is truly age old. And so I think it becomes more important than ever, right? And you kind of see that in the data. You see the boom in live music and ticketing, and sure, most of that is at the arena level. You also see, this sort of experience economy booming in the past 10 years. And I think you have to adapt to the times, right? People maybe value something that's more sort of packaged, right? Make it easy for them to meet people. Maybe people don't go out of their way as much to meet people. Sure, I also take a lot of this sort of Gen Z prognostication with a grain of salt, because when I go and pop into the venue and see a new act and a young audience, it doesn't feel any different to me than it was 10, 15 years ago when we went out. They're meeting people, they're chatting, they're having a good time, and to me, it serves the same purpose, and it's only become more valuable.
This IRL, if you like, community building, where you're really putting effort into creating a space that sort of encourages not just this connection and this excitement, but it is about building a community of people who are there for the venue as much as they are for everything else. Knowing what the margins are like on running a live venue, it sounds expensive compared to the traditional model. So, you mentioned the Hacienda before. Famously, Peter Hook said if they'd stood on the door and handed a £10 note to everybody who came in, they would have lost less money. So, what? I presume you're not in that financial situation, but how do you fund this in terms of the extra effort and making the books balance?
Things haven't changed that much since Peter Hook's days. I think the arts have always been supported by patrons. You go back to the time of the great European classical artists and beyond, and even these days, why are we struggling? Why is Spotify struggling? We, at the end of the day, don't pay what music really costs. And so I think every venue struggles with this, and you have to find capital somewhere. We had to raise money to build elsewhere. And it is still a challenge every single day, right? And we take very seriously building a company culture that values people's mental health and pays people well and hires enough people where people aren't overworked. And, to be honest, we're still figuring it out. It has not been smooth sailing. COVID threw a huge wrench in the works. The relief money that came from the government, thanks to NEVA, has been instrumental in keeping our ecosystem alive. But there's no two ways about it, which is that you have to be able to play in capital markets, right? You have to either find investors or patrons. The membership model helps. I wonder if more and more venues will also be looking at crowdfunding. We're sort of an endangered species and kind of always have been. And I think because of how much people love music, you'll always find people pushing that rock up and fighting that good fight. But to be honest, we're still figuring it out. And I think we also live in a era where business is rewarded for either being really big or really small. And if you're stuck in the middle, it's really difficult. And so we ourselves are trying to figure out, how do we get out of this middle, right? The membership program is one way to do it, right? Do we? And you also see changes like, 10 years ago, it would be anathema for an independent venue, or 15 years ago, to work with brands, right? These days, it's like, look, brands, ones that share ethos and values with what we are doing, they're important to the ecosystem. And so, yeah, there's not enough dollars coming in. And honestly, I don't think any of us have really figured it out yet.
I'm sure there's some people listening to this who either run small venues, book bands for small venues, promote for small venues, and they're trying to crack the same nut you are, which is how do you do it? And it almost seems like the value there is a little bit like independent artists are finding now, which is they want to go direct to fan. They want to build their world around them. They want to have those. You mentioned super fans. They want to, essentially the people who are subscribing to be members are super fans of elsewhere, and they get rewards for it, right? So it feels like there's some sort of alignment coming in terms of like, well, you can't just have one income stream. You've got to bring people in this way. You've got to build this thing up and believe that the place you're building is meaningful, and really lean into that. Is that an oversimplification, or is this a sort of model that you think a lot of other independent venues in cities all over the world can follow?
I think they absolutely can follow this. Like you said, membership's not entirely new. I think we're adapting it to this era of, instead of sort of members only or exclusivity, it's about inclusivity. You also see, though, the rise of these member social clubs everywhere, right? All on the sort of high-end luxury exclusivity status-based stuff. But, the club is a club for a reason, right? It's a club. I think that as of now, we actually haven't changed that much from the quote unquote old model. It's still tickets and drinks. And it's still run by a small group of very dedicated people who are generally overworked and underpaid. There's a shelf life to how long we can survive here. And, I really hope that we can change that. I think the membership program is going to have a good impact, but it's not going to solve all of our problems. I think that I don't know. I think you're seeing this also in the live music industry, right? One of my concerns is that live bands, just the mental health issues, the pressures of the industry to tour with the whole band, the expense of it all, right, means you're going to see more DJ nights, right?
Mm-hmm.
You may see venues only doing DJ nights because you don't need sound check and production and all this stuff, right? So I think like we're all trying to find ways to adapt, but none of them are sort of sort of material enough yet to allow us to just sort of like flourish and blossom. And I think it's a little easier on the DJ side of things and the dance music side of things, and we're seeing a shift towards that. And I think there's the members program, which I do think we're going to see more and more venues adopt.
If you're looking forward, then we're going through this time of rapid change in lots of things, but particularly around live music at this level. What will the average local small to lower medium-sized venue be like in, say, 5 to 10 years? These are essential for local music scenes. They're the lifeblood for artists getting their first step on the ladder, and they are a social place for all the people who love that stuff and support those artists, right? So they are essential, but they're under the most pressure they've ever been under. So what will that venue look like?
I think you're going to see a lot more smaller neighborhood clubs that are dance music centric, only do dance music. I think you'll see very few live stages. And I think that the line between artist and audience continues to blur. That barrier to entry continues to come down, particularly with AI tools and things of that nature. It's going to be fascinating to see what Gen AI comes up with in terms of musicality and genres and what live performance looks like in that era. And that's not too far away, 5 to 10 years. And so with this blurring between artist and fan, I think further pushes this community element, right? This sort of self-supported ecosystem. And that's all it really is, right? It's always been that way. It's fans supporting artists, and you might see that change in terms of a direct subscription model or anything else, but as that community continues to commingle and blur, I think the membership model is a powerful one. I think particularly if you're a smaller venue, it can be very powerful. It can also be very powerful in creating that sort of central community, right? Those sort of cultural carriers. Um, and yeah, I think you're going to see a sort of big bifurcation, unfortunately, between the small independent venue and the more the spaces with sort of big corporations behind them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. And on the final note on the subscription model, are you planning on expanding that to have more people on that platform, or is there a sort of natural limit you think for in terms of how it works with the venue?
This is exactly the question we're asking ourselves. And we were surprised by sort of the interest in it a year ago. And as we try to expand it now, it's hard, right? It is right from marketing. How do you message this correctly? Customer support, right? How do you treat your members well? And okay, now there's issues with the program, or we have to build tech around it, right? We have to monitor customer behavior and try to make sure that people are happy and understand the economics behind it, which is complicated. Requires some statistical navigation. How many times do people come before? How many times do people come after? Are we making money? Are we losing money? I'm not sure yet, right? So, it requires reporting and insights. And operationally, you got to say to the team, hey, if they have this badge, they get these perks, otherwise these perks. And then if you don't fulfill those perks, right, how you have to do right by your members. So there is a complexity that is exponential as you try to add members. So that's one constraint. And then on the other side, how many people are actually elsewhere super fans, or how many people actually just come? And then the question is that the upper limit of demand, or do you need to change your product offering? Is there actually something else people want than whatever you took a guess at and threw up, right? So we're going through all of that now, and it's resource intensive. And you can set aside some money to do it, and then what happens when the dollars run out? Do you keep going? Do you hold the line? So these are all the questions we're asking ourselves, and we're going through the process right now of actually revamping some of these things and sort of launching the second wave of memberships.
Yeah. Well, I'll put some links below the podcast to, well, first of all, to Elsewhere's website, which is a joy to behold in itself, but also the Discord and the and some links to the offering so people can see exactly how you're sort of pitching this membership, and they can explore it for themselves. Dhruv, one final question before we leave. Often we don't talk about music very much on these podcasts because it's about the business, but we have talked a little bit about it. So I'm going to nail you down. What is your favorite piece of music? And if you could only listen to one thing for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh, gosh. Well, the first thing that just came to mind was there was this beautiful Directions in Music live album that was recorded at Massey Hall in Toronto. It was a tribute to Miles Davis. It's called Directions in Music, with Herbie Hancock, Roy Hargrove, Wayne Shorter, and Jack DeJohnette. I'm butchering that. God, I must have listened to that album 1,000 times. And I think if you put me on a desert island, I'd probably get by.
And that sort of leans into you said you had a jazz sort of background. It leans into sort of that sort of area, right?
Yeah. I'm dating myself, but I was a very obsessed jazz saxophone player, and unfortunately, as good as I was never going to be the next Coltrane.
Yeah, right. Well, it's funny, I ask people this every episode, and jazz pops up a lot. Some of the obvious ones, Miles Davis and things, but people they sort of feel like they if they were pinned down to one, they often go for something like jazz or something along those lines because they feel like they're going to get a lot out of it from repeated listens, which I guess is the point of jazz, right?
Fascinating. That makes me that's heartening to hear. And there's a lot of very interesting things happening in jazz and jazz offshoots these days. Braxton Cook's doing some amazing stuff. There's I think it's very easy for old timers to bemoan, oh, it was better back then. But man, what I love about this is that music still serves the same purpose. There's just as much musicality and the fiber of humanity in every generation as there was before. And the stuff that, these kids, quote unquote, are coming up with these days, it's still brilliant. And it's still, the joy on people's faces is the same as it's ever been. And that community element is the same as it's ever been, if not more important in this digital era. So that's my rant.
Yeah, well, on that note, a good point to round it up, I think. So, Dhruv Chopra, thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
And there we are. Thanks again to Dhruv. And if you found that interview useful, please do share it on with someone else who you think will get something out of it. If you want to get in touch with me, of course, I would love to hear from you. You can email me on joe@musically.com. And if you'd like to stay in touch another way, we have a free weekly email called The Knowledge, which rounds up a soup song of the best analysis, news, marketing insight, and skills from across Music Ally's broad range of services, including Music Ally Pro. So sign up and impress your friends. Links to that and to the music that Dhruv mentioned and to elsewhere are in the description as ever. Right, that's it. Thank you for listening and for joining us here on the podcast. I've been Joe Sparrow, you have been you, and until next time, farewell.